We only formed towards the end of last year. In fact, at the back end of 2022. And we formed from the merger of Timber Trade Federation and TRADA, the Timber Research and Development Association. And we put them together for a number of reasons. One is that timber is a big player in the construction materials industry, but it always seemed to be very fragmented. We wanted to put together one entire supply chain organization that went from sawmill and importer all the way through to specifier, all that way through that whole journey. And the reason being was that a number of reasons. One, we were going into COVID. There's been a lot of consolidation in the industry. So the sense of demarcation between what is an importer, a distributor, a merchant, a manufacturer, those lines were blurring. And I think that the Timber Trade Federation, or the organizations that we ran, weren't representative of our members. You've got companies like yourselves that probably sit in a number of different camps within the timber supply chain. It's not just timber supply, you're doing manufacturing and so on. So we wanted to cover that whole gamut and that whole thing, and increase the power then and the voice for the whole timber sector to house builders, to developers and to clients. And what we've got in there is that we're starting to do all of the things that we did before. So we have services specifically for agents and importers, for distributors, for merchants, for manufacturers. But really and for architects and engineers, all of a sudden we have a huge membership of architects and engineering firms within TDUK. But really the power of this, whilst we provide services for each of those verticals, if you like, the power of this is in that horizontal. We can pick this all up and turn to house builders, and house builders in particular as being one of the biggest users of timber, the biggest drivers for that supply chain. And that horizontal, we can say all of the things you need for your timber journey, all of the information you need, and all of the companies, suppliers, and others that you need for your journey with timber housing, timber supply, timber components, whatever. It's all in here. It's all in Timber Development UK, and we represent all of them. You can find them on our website, you can find them through our publications, and so on. So what we actually create is a much more powerful box of tricks, if you like, to sell then to that house builder, to the client, to whomever it is that's developing a project with timber. We've got it all at Timber Development UK.
The carbon saving benefits of using timber within construction are pretty well known now. I just thought, have you got any other sort of areas of why we should be using more timber within our homes and in construction in general?
Most house builders have recognised that they have to, they've got to meet their carbon targets, and that there's a variety of ways of doing that, and they are slowly adjusting. I think they're also realising that they need, to attract the finance into their own businesses, they need to meet a whole range of ESG criteria, and that timber helps them meet not just the carbon, but a variety of other aspects of that environmental, social and governance criteria within their own things. But then I think that there's a kind of a wider sell, if you like, about health, well-being, and sort of natural aesthetics as well. And I think within those concepts, house builders are cottoning on, and certainly house buyers and the general public are cottoning on to them and realizing that there is quite a benefit of having natural products in your home, natural products in your life. There's a sort of an emotional connection, if you like, between yourselves and other natural products around. We used to have a huge piece of wood actually in our meeting room here, and it was just an old bit of oak, and visitors used to come in and almost like pat it like a horse as they came in, right? And I don't think you'd get that with concrete and steel. You wouldn't have the same sort of, people would almost be stroking it. It was a very strange reaction. Maybe that does happen with concrete and steel, but I think our web server blocks me from those websites. But so you do see that connection, but on a sort of health and well-being, there is now a whole body of evidence about using timber in construction, timber in design, timber in interiors, and the benefits of health and well-being within there. And that comes through, you know, on a kind of an emotional level, that I think with the connection between you and wood products, but then also there's a sort of a you know, much more scientific thing about air quality, and all of these, you know, sort of very real factors about using natural wood products in buildings that people can relate to. That is becoming a, you know, there's a growing body of evidence, there's a growing body of work, and there's a growing sort of thrust amongst house builders and homeowners towards that trend. So I think the, you know, the low carbon is certainly a huge driver, and it's one that we always push. We've got lots of information about it, and we will keep pushing that out. But all of these other factors are coming into play. And I think that, I mean, the one that we always come back to, whether people are sort of fluent in the language of carbon and all that sort of stuff or not, there is a link, actually, paradoxically, with using more timber and growing forests. Yeah. And I think that is something that we don't make enough of. If you look in Europe and North America, you've got, you know, good regulation. There's good procurement regulation that only allows us to buy certified timber, you know, PEFC style goods and so on, which meant in Europe at least, the forests have grown by something, I can't remember exactly what the figures are, but over 10%. Yeah. Whilst at the same time, the timber industry is generating more value and more volume out of those forests, and they are growing them as a result of demand. And you know, it's a really good link where demand kind of grows the resource, which you can't really say about any other material. And so there's all of the sort of biodiversity and other benefits that come from having growing forests and then putting the products in your home. So I think that link throughout that whole supply chain is one that we need to publicize more and do more with.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that there's also that level of flexibility with timber that I don't think some companies, architects, have a full understanding of, or certainly look into. Because if you look at glulam and mass timber in general, the opportunity there and the possibilities of using that within the construction industry are huge. And I just think, you know, we've just dipped our toe in the water really with that. Yeah. Hopefully there'll be more of that in the future.
Yeah, on those ones, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, particularly with glulam and with LVL. Actually, I think there are two products that could penetrate the market in the same way that I-beams and I-joists and metal web joists actually have done. Yeah. Because they can be incorporated with, if you think of a small house extension, you could substitute a lot of the time, substitute the steel frame that is used there for timber products. Yeah. And the engineered ones give a lot more opportunity. And I think the local builders and house builders, you know, there's a big opportunity for them now to get on board with that. Yeah. And kind of steal a march on their competitors. They could sell it as a competitive advantage. They could sell that back to the householder to say, actually, we are skilled at doing this, and we could do it in timber. Some of the bigger contractors, and I'll mention this one company, maybe not allowed to, but there's a company called B&K Structures. I'm sure you know them. Do a whole load of work in mass timber, and they really made a name for themselves. They were a steel fabricator and a steel contractor, and realized at some point that actually we could do part of this in timber and part of it in steel. And there was a transition with what they were doing, and they got a good competitive advantage. I don't know if they still hold that advantage, but certainly they got that. And I think we haven't seen that in house builders and other companies. I guess maybe a more appropriate one on a local scale. You know, when you see these PVC extensions, and you see you go to a builder's merchants, and people are selling that thing. You could be doing timber versions, and there's got to be a company out there that could steal a march on that.
Well, we've at Scott's, our carports that we sell to the national house builders are glulam, and they are incredibly easy to install. We send them to subcontractors because the ease of using the timber We put connectors in the posts and beams, and they all slot together, and it's just such a tidy package, and then you get a consistency through the site. But the glue lam itself is such a versatile material to work with that we've just had fantastic results. So yeah, we're all for it, and we're looking for different ways to be able to do it. And it's similar with the difference between, going back to what you were saying about the aesthetics, and we do the timber porches, and we can do exactly what GRP do, but it's in timber.
Yeah.
It might be slightly more expensive, but I can guarantee you, if you put one next to the other, which one people would prefer to go for, without any shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good, I think a lot of the innovation now, we've got innovative products. The innovation is going to be selling exactly what you're doing there, seeing a niche that you can sell those products into that can be easily adopted within current building types, current building models, and current sort of procurement styles and methods, and selling it in exactly that way. So yeah, hats off to you.
Fire and timber is a very, very big one for me, because I think there's a lot of misinformation that gets bandied around about that subject. So what TDUK doing to address sort of concerns of house builders and possibly more importantly the insurers for using timber in construction with relation to fire?
It's one of those areas where no one organisation can cover off all of the different answers. So we are launching a collaborative project this year. It'll be launched in Q1, a new website, Fire Hub, which is a collaboration between TDUK, Swedish Wood, and the STA, and a bunch of others. And it's a peer-reviewed live website that will be free to use for designers, for house builders, for anybody, for people within our industry, people without our industry. That will have all the information you need on fire design, fire safety, fire construction, mitigating risks during the construction process, which is actually, the biggest risk is during the construction process itself. If things are done wrong, things are not, certain steps aren't taken, all those sorts of areas. And we're going to be launching that, and launching it with big fanfare, big PR, big marketing drive, to launch that with engineers, with house builders, and with everybody else, to make sure that they've got that information. It's free to use, and it will be a live site. So as things change, we will change the information on there. It's fully peer reviewed by, we've had engineers, we've had academics, we've had fire engineers and others all working on this, and obviously our own members and members of all our different organisations working on that as well. So that's one thing that we're doing, and we will have not just the information but webinars alongside of that.
Yeah.
There's also a program of testing, fire testing, that will probably resume again. The STA, I've got to say, are doing a great job on leading on a lot of those concerns, as are the Truss Rafter Association and others, to make sure that we've got all the appropriate test data up to date, and that we can be giving that out to everyone involved in there. But I think with house builders as well, they've got to understand, and the insurance sector, they've got to understand that there are different risks according to different building types. And there is obviously one thing, I think, and we've got a publication coming out on this, we as the timber industry have to start using correct terminology for the buildings and products and styles of building that we're making, and not just call everything a timber building or a timber frame. There's a big difference between a timber frame house, 2-story, 3-bedroom house that is rolled out all the time by volume house builders, and a one-off, 8-story building in the centre of a city made out of CLT and whatever. The difference in risk profile is greater than the difference in height of those buildings, and I think that people have to understand that and not put all timber products into the same category. because, you know, the risk is enormously different. There's a new book coming out for the insurance industry this year, led primarily by a group called Built by Nature, which is a philanthropic fund that's launching this, and it's called the Insurance Playbook, the Timber Insurance Playbook. That's coming out imminently. I'm not sure entirely when, but it's certainly going to be in the first quarter of this year. And it's aimed directly at insurers and the insurance market. It's been written with the involvement of lots of insurance companies. And I think this is something that the timber industry has got to get better at. I think in the past, we have been guilty of producing our own materials and sort of pushing them onto the market without involving those professionals from that market in the process. So this is something where the insurance companies have been actively involved as well. And now there's a kind of a playbook for how to design and build and get the insurance policies sorted. And it acts as a sort of a reassurance guide for all of those insurers. I mean, I would also just want to add that there are still insurance policies out there that, you know, you can still get the insurance for things. Most of the time, on the smaller buildings, for volume house builders, it's really no problem at all. I think the larger buildings, the policies are there, the premium may be higher, you know, but on those bigger buildings, the good example of that was an office building that came up. It's called the Black and White building. There were question marks over how, you know, will you get insurance and all that sort of stuff. And the client was apparently getting nervous, but then saw that they got the insurance very easily, although paid a higher premium. But also, you get a higher uplift in value of the whole building because it's made of wood, because it's made of timber. It meets all the low carbon criteria. It meets all of these great ESG criteria. They can rent it out. They can rent the space at a higher value. So they were much happier.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. Benefits all around, absolutely.
Yeah. So there may be a higher upfront thing, but I think that it pays off commercially over time.
We're finally in 2023. 2022 seemed like a very, very long year. And obviously there's a lot pointing towards recession and how the market's going to react and what's going to be going on with the construction industry. From a TDUK point of view, what are your sort of main thoughts on what the next 12 months are going to be like and what you're going to be doing over the remainder of the year?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, good thought. So you know, everybody's been looking forward to the end of all of the screwed up supply chains that came with COVID and all of those sorts of things. And some of those problems are still working themselves through, and you know, they're still coming in. You know, international logistics and shipping and all that sort of stuff. All of the indicators now really point to this year being flat. There will still be activity going on, but there won't be much growth, and that there may tip into a recessionary point. And I think that's true. I think that's reflected in all of the forecasts. And the trouble with that, sometimes those things become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can talk yourself down very quickly, or talk yourself out of things, or talk yourself into a sort of a recession quite quickly. I think this time it will be true. There will be a bit of a flatlining, and then towards the end of the year, or certainly into 2024, things will pick up again. I think that there's a few initiatives that I think are good. From our point of view, we want to make sure, okay, it may be flat, but we need to go out all guns blazing to promote, to educate, and to train, and inspire, so that all of the stuff we're doing, when that market does come back, if we can reach enough people there, we want people to be coming back and going for timber and buying timber, and building and designing their projects with that. And I think that there will be a lot of downsizing in companies across the supply chain. I think you know, from building companies through to supply companies, but we would hope that it comes back in the following year. we will do our best to sort of, go out and promote that. What I would hope is that we might see some greater initiative on the government side to promote, or to sort of stimulate the construction sector and the house building sector in particular, because it stimulates a number of different supply chains, which can, give a big boost economically. And we saw that during the COVID times, that they really tried to keep construction working. And I think that will happen again. In what form it takes, who knows? What we have got bubbling in the background at a government level that ourselves, STA and Confor are very, very involved with is the Timber and Construction Working Group. And it's going across departments. It's DEFRA, BAYS, and the wonderfully named TDUK, the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. And they're looking at how do we use more timber systems in construction? And they've got a number of objectives. One, a few years ago, the Climate Change Committee gave a report about how you decarbonise construction and said quite clearly, use more timber. Secondly, they want a pathway they want to plant more trees in the UK, particularly in England, and say, well, what's the commercial kind of pathway? What's the pull through? What's a market mechanism for them? Can we start to use more timber in construction, and then that acts as a pull through? And then also it's about setting up local factories, local jobs, skills, and all the rest of it. And I think that's quite an interesting initiative that the government's actually noticed. There's a lot of things we can criticise the government for, but at least they've noticed this one. And so we're heavily involved with that. That'll take a long time to bear any fruit, but at least it's going on in the background, and it shows a level of awareness about the benefits for timber and construction. So so I think no surprises. I think this year's going to be pretty flat. But I think that we just need to do all that we can to minimise the flatlining, to keep the promotion going, keep doing all the things you're doing, to be talking to house builders, contractors, and others, all the education, training, promotion, and really then try and come up trumps when the market comes back in a year, 18 months' time.
Yeah, from our point of view, from a timber manufacturing point of view, we're still busy. There's still inquiries coming in, and I'm talking to the national house builders. No one's really panicking, and there's still plans that there's no real sign of huge swathes of sites being pulled or stopped or anything like that. There might be a bit of a slowdown, but there is a commitment, certainly for affordable housing, for things to carry on. So we're optimistic, and it's good to see that there certainly, like you said, at government level, that there's discussions being had and things put in place for timber to be a far more prevalent part of the building industry in 2023 and definitely beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things, it's you can only control what you can control, and you've got to just keep plowing away with what you're doing. And like you say, you're still busy, and we've just got to keep plugging away and fighting the good fight.
Indeed.